Hey guys, who's in the mood for a D&D story? So, of course I'm talking about Dungeons & Dragons, which is really more mainstream than it used to be, which is a surprise. But, it's still cool to see that people are enjoying it so much as they do. I've been enjoying it for a good couple of years now. I don't remember when I got started, somewhere within the last 7 years, but it was a lot of fun. So, when one of my coworkers wanted to get me into a session of D&D, I jumped on board because they needed people and I obviously enjoy the game. So, you're probably asking what edition he was playing. I don't know. To this day, I'm not sure. The guy, we'll call him Daryl, decided that he would homebrew a game. Great. What's his experience with D&D? Absolutely nothing. I kid you not, this guy was going to homebrew a game based off the Player's Handbook in the Red Box, which I honestly still don't know what edition that's based off of, but he was going to homebrew it off of that. Already I started seeing problems. No one had played before except me, including the guy running the game. And the Red Box, at least the copy of the Player's Handbook we got, was monstrously limited. We could play human, dwarf, elf, halfling, aka hobbit. What class could we play? Fighter, wizard, druid, fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. It was the classic 4-4 setup. Okay, sure. Why not? It's a good place to start. He kind of alleviated these by saying, don't worry, I'll let you pseudo multi-class into whatever you want later. That's fine. At least I thought it was going to be fine. I wanted to do something pretty simple. Originally I was wanting to play like a half-orc barbarian lady. Didn't quite work out, so I made a human who was raised by orcs, who started up as a fighter and eventually kind of morphed into a barbarian. But he didn't want to give me the resistances when I was in battle rage. So I could do double damage, and everyone could hurt me. So I wasn't a very good barbarian, in a manner of speaking. The party balance wasn't amazing either. I'm not bad-mouthing anybody in the party, but the fact of the matter was we had no cleric. Nobody wanted to be a cleric. We had 3 fighters, including myself, 2 wizards, and a rogue. And that was with the first group of characters we got. This homebrew quickly started breaking down because while they weren't basing anything off D&D, which has its own lore, and apparently they didn't know that going in, they were basing it off stuff like Diablo or Dragon Age, which is fine. Both of the games can be used for inspiration. In fact, they're great sources of inspiration. Except some of the concepts they were trying to fit didn't really work with the mechanics we were given. The self-appointed tank of the team was an elf fighter who was trying to be the arcane warrior from the multiplayer from Dragon Age, Inquisition specifically. The mechanics didn't exist. They kind of exist with the Eldritch Knight, but not the way he was thinking of it. So he just kind of ended up being bad at his job because he couldn't get that barrier you get when you hit with the Spectral Blade in Inquisition. So he just ended up dying a lot and having to get picked back up, and we had to be given a monstrous amount of health potions so we could stand. But, some of the classes worked. My barbarian was pretty good. The girl playing a wizard was, pretty good. She had a lot of summons and added more pieces to the board. I'll get to that later. One of the fighters just wanted to be Guts from Berserk. He was one of the more outrageous guys. He wanted pets. He wanted a mechanical arm with a cannon. He wanted to pull a bastard sword out of his mouth. That's how he drew his sword. It teleported out of his mouth. He wanted to be the tallest guy there, despite the fact that there were elves present, and he was just a stock human. He took offense that I built a 6-foot woman for some reason. He was also the tallest guy at the table, so I think it was a bit of personal pride in that, but we eventually settled it and let it go. But it was just odd. And a lot of the stuff he wanted to, he just didn't get to do. He eventually got the wolf companion, but he never got the mecha arm, he never got to pull the sword out of his mouth. It was just an odd character. Oh, and he was the first fighter I've ever seen with an intelligence stat above 10. Which was... that's unusual. Very unusual. You've got your strength fighters, your dex fighters, but his secondary was intelligence, not dex or constitution. Really strange build. Like, it existed and it worked, but it was just real strange. Our rogue lasted maybe five sessions, and then she actually just moved out of the province, so that happened. But the other mage at the table was a DMPC. Oh boy. Now, he played a wizard, or I can't even call it a wizard. And I'll get to that right now, because magic was poorly explained in the book we got to start off with. In the Red Box book, for some reason, magic, they don't talk about spell slots. They don't talk about spellcraft costs, like material costs for casting spells. They don't talk about long rests. They don't talk about short rests and how that's implemented. And if they did, he decided to scrap the whole thing. And it basically became, how do I cast magic? You just do it. I kid you not. Lo and behold, the DMPC is a mage. I'm calling it a mage because it wasn't a sorcerer. Like, it doesn't have the arcane elements of a sorcerer. It wasn't a wizard. He didn't have a spell book, and he didn't have a long roster of spells he could pull off of. He just found spells he liked online, and spell levels weren't a thing either. So he just found spells that sounded cool and gave them to himself. More on that later. And he what do you want to do? I cast Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is like a 7th level spell, to my knowledge. And he had it by level 2. Maybe 3. But yeah, so, he was basically using magic to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and he solved all the problems for us because he knew the answers and his PC knew the answers, because of course he did. And he just kind of showed up with no explanation. It was hilarious because he was using a Magic the Gathering board game set for miniatures because he didn't want to buy any, and he had the set, which is fine. But the fact that he was using Jace Beleren, the archetype blue mage planeswalker, I can do everything, I am everything, that was his miniature. There's some humor in that. I found that pretty funny in hindsight. It got ridiculous. He had by a couple of sessions in, he had a magic weaponized armchair from hell. It was the chair from Saints Row. He gave himself the chair from Saints Row as a personal weapon at level 2 or 3, really early on. And he just sat in that and fired like rockets and miniguns at people all the damn time. He barely cast spells. It was ridiculous. He could also fly in that chair. It was a big table. It was a little ridiculous, and it got even more ridiculous when he said, "Hey, I'm adding. Everyone can now have a second character." There was like 7 people at the table. 3 of us, including myself, because I felt I was forced to. No. I retired my barbarian because we had too much fighting, and I built a cleric because we didn't have a cleric we needed. Healing people were dying too much. So I built a cleric. People were given second characters, so now there were like 10 PCs at the table, like 10 character sheets at the table, and it got long. I remember combat was a problem. It was just how he ran his numbers in this homebrew. Combat took forever. And I know what people are like, oh, combat, damn, combat took like an hour on that one. That was a long time. No, when I say combat took forever, I mean we spent 3 months fighting a horde of zombies. We spent 3 weeks fighting a horde of zombies. We spent a whole month fighting a horde of zombies. The same horde. We get into session, we'd pick up the fight because that's where we left off, and we'd have to drop it because it was like 1 in the morning, and everyone had to go home. We had work in the morning. And then we'd pick it up the next round, and the one after that, and it just took us forever. I remember, like, when I was playing my barbarian, I took a great axe because I wanted to hit real hard. So I'm rolling a 12-sided die for my hit dice. I'm hitting for like high 80s in rage with a great axe at like level 2, which is good, right? I'm supposed to be hitting that hard. The zombies have like 500 health. The shambling mounds had maybe 1,000 and 1,050. It was... What the hell is he... What the hell? Like, combat is not supposed to be this long, drawn-out slugfest that takes multiple sessions. We played once a week. And it took us 3 weeks to get through a combat module. Just a single combat. As you can imagine, this game... It eventually just became an excuse to hang out with friends. People started playing music at the table and singing along to it, started looking up funny videos. It was a mess. It was one of the worst campaigns of D&D I'd ever been a part of. And for some reason I got it into my head that when it started to die, I thought, I love D&D and I like these people. I'm going to see if I can keep it going. And that was my second mistake.